Hi, folks. With Tacitus today, your pushback channel. And thank you for joining this audio radio. No pictures. Listen to this in your car or truck or as you're going along in public transport live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about pharmacy closures or closures of some retail stores. We've seen in the United States, there've been widespread closures. I think one of the Walgreens I think announced that they're looking at closing somewhere between 20 and 25% of their stores, and other outlets, whether it be takeout food or fast food or even budget priced to eat in restaurants, these sorts of things. They're all seem to be under a fair bit of frontline pressure. So. And there are numerous closures. Now, the corporate line that, in the case of Walgreens, the corporate line is that inflation is the cause, which is very vague. Well, what's inflation? How is inflation? That's not explained, just inflation. And it's a kind of a catch-all phrase that means nothing. It means everything, encompasses any possibility you want it to. So they haven't explained what's going on. And they could say, well, the cost of living is out of control. People don't have the spare bucks anymore, but they'd be under a lot of political pressure not to come out with that, especially not with the presidential election being only months away. So one assumes that the government or political spin doctors have been in there saying, look, this is what, use this word inflation. Well, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it's perfect in that case. It means. So let's have a look at that. But just having a look at pharmacies as an example. When I was a kid, there was sort of one pharmacy in the town, and that was it. If it was the bigger the place, the more pharmacies, of course. But the idea there'd be a pharmacy within, a mile or two of an existing pharmacy would be rare. There just weren't that many pharmacies around. Similarly, pharmacies were different in those days. Not all, but some of the drugs were actually made up by the pharmacist. And not like it's all pre-packaged and off the shelf that you typically see today. And the law is that only a pharmacist can dispense the drug. But the pharmacy, the idea that the pharmacist is some highly qualified, highly trained, that's all changed because the affirmative action education, particularly in pharmacology, is that pretty much anyone, any illiterate peasant's getting a degree in pharmaceuticals these days, and they don't have to make it up anymore. It's all pre-packaged with a label on it, and they just run off a checklist. But it's still the law that only a pharmacist can dispense the drugs. So they've got an artificial layer of in there of supposed expertise, but there's no expertise really. So there was pharmacies were rare, and the delivery was, again, the pharmacist would make up a lot of the drugs in their in the chemist and the back room and all this sort of stuff. Now that's changed. The drugs are mass produced in factories and just dispensed. They've got a little box and label. But also that pharmacies have changed in as much as when their expertise wasn't the focal point of the service or product delivery, that is, it's all manufactured centrally and packaged and distributed, then what were the pharmacies going to do? So they turned them into kind of, almost grocery store supermarkets where you could buy a whole lot of other stuff, only some of which you had to go to a pharmacy. For example, there was a time when if you wanted aspirin, you had to go to a pharmacy, but of course now you can buy it in the grocery store or the discount store. So what the pharmacy was selling was different. They'd become little grocery stores in many ways, and then they went into franchise operations and all sorts of things like that. So even in a small town, you could have, it went from having one pharmacy in the small town, two maybe at most, to suddenly having 5 or 6 pharmacies in the town because of the nature of they were, again, small retail stores selling a whole range of stuff. While you were in there getting your prescription filled, you would also, while you're there, you would buy I don't know, hand creams and cosmetics and so on. So that was the idea. Now, increasingly, more and more of the things that you had to go to a pharmacy to buy, you could, over the years, you could buy at a grocery store for a cheaper price. I noticed just where I went in to get fill a prescription for an elderly relative of mine, and I noticed they had a particular face wash on special that she likes, and I am out about getting it, and it was like $25 or something for the big container. But I had it in the back of my head that I'd seen it in the grocery store for cheaper than that, and sure enough, you could buy it on the grocery store for it was also a promotional price for like $16. So it was a $9 difference for the same product. So the pharmacies are losing business from that. In Australia, at least some of them have integrated other business. So they've been leasing part of their floor space to, say, a post office, postal services, or other type services. So that brings more traffic in the door, and hopefully while those people are there, they'll buy something in the store. But this idea, when this pharmacy thing, the grocery store integrated type pharmacy operation took off, also with many franchise operations as well, then there was a case of over-servicing. So there were just too many pharmacies anyway. So it had gone from really not enough, where you had to walk a long way or go a long way to find a pharmacy, to suddenly where there's a pharmacy around every corner. And that was over-servicing. And that was always going to come unstuck at some point, always. When you get that level of over-servicing, it's relying on factors, market conditions, economic factors that will only ever be temporary. And this is definitely the case in pharmacies. So I'm not surprised to hear that the Walgreens and all these sort of places are closing, because when the retail sort of foot traffic, store activity was buoyant, which it was there for a while, that sort of over-servicing, too many pharmacies could be sustained. But as after COVID, the online buying, the more reliability of there was a time when you'd buy stuff online and it would be a week or 2 weeks before you'd see it, maybe a month. That's kind of changed now, that often you can get delivery within 2 or 3 days. I was surprised just recently. I wanted to buy something online, and it took a week to arrive. Today that's now a rarity. It was quite common years ago, but today it's a rarity. So if you can, just from the comfort of your lounge room or something, you can order whatever online, and it arrives the next day. Why wouldn't you do it? Now, if you're going into the retail store anyway, you're going into that part of town anyway, then you probably would get it. But if you're not, or the weather's inhospitable, and you can get someone else to trudge through the snow or the rain and deliver it to you, well, fine. and get it at a cheaper price. Why wouldn't you? So there are other more convenient options for sourcing some of the products you would otherwise go to a pharmacy for. I take the view that it's better to get out and have a bit of exercise and get around, but it's just not always possible. Either I'm busy, or again, the weather's bad or something like that. But this over-servicing is a big issue. Now, another issue, particularly in Australia, but I've noticed it elsewhere also, it's a bit like the the corner convenience store that's owned by the Indian operator. The Indians have been huge in buying up franchise chains, and a lot of the pharmacies have gone to franchising now. Now, what the Indian business, I'll simplify this, but the Indian business model is they use offshore funds to buy up various franchise chains, or maybe multiple stores within a franchise chain. And then they appoint their own Indian pharmacist in there. Then they import peasant slave labor from India, and they put them up, 20 to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment accommodation, which is better than the rural peasant dirt, grass hut, dirt floor lifestyle that these people had. At least they got something like a flushing toilet and running water, which is like, wow, hey. So they bring these peasants in and paying them They package up the the real estate, the rent and the real estate and the food. It's all packaged up, but they can only eat from the Indian restaurant that the same offshore money man from India has already owned. The Indian offshore money man also owns the property that they go into. They're housed into. The peasant workers they're brought out. So the whole thing is a scam. None of the workers pay any tax because they're under the tax threshold. The Indian offshore money man is loaning the money, but with punitive interest rates and management fees, which means that the local pharmacy doesn't pay. All the local Australian operations don't pay a nickel in tax. The workers are all imported and artificially underpaid. So and they buttress their real estate investment and their Indian restaurants, or which has common ownership. So it's an outrageous scam in my view, at least. But it means that the pharmacy can operate at well below the operating cost that it would be if it was run as a genuine business. And again, they've got the affirmative action pharmacist in there and so on. So it's an all-round scam, but it means that they can keep the business in operation. But what it also means is that the legitimate pharmacy that may be nearby is under the same pressure, like the cost of living pressure that other legitimate businesses are experiencing. So only the illegitimate business being manipulated by offshore tax offsetting and all sorts of scams like that. That's the only one that can stay in business. But it's not a legitimate business. It's just a money laundering tax scam business. But that's the one that's going to survive, not the legitimate pharmacy business. Now, in the United States, there are other pressures, like it's not illegal to steal. I think it's up to $1,000 in a number of jurisdictions. That the law enforcement won't act on that type of level of theft, and if people are arrested, they won't be prosecuted by the activist prosecutors in that district. So they're back on the street doing the stealing again. And they can. Some of these people are stealing $1,000 a day of stuff from a whole variety of stores, then selling it on the street for a quarter of the price you'd pay in the shop, and running a huge black market operation. An aggregation, excuse me, a huge black market operation as well, which is further undermining, if you like, the proper competitive economics that any advanced economy should be adhering to. So there are a number of factors there that are affecting the American things, such as the theft and so on. Insurance companies are saying we won't cover it, or the insurance is going to be so high that it's punitively high, so then it's not worth it. And then now on top of this, there's the cost of living pressures. So if we look at, and again comparing this in 1975, you would typically spend something like 18 to 20% of your income on rent, say, or mortgage payments. This is assuming the average wage, by the way, and the average house price or average rent. Now today, even a modest one-bedroom apartment in an ordinary area, we're not talking waterfront here, is going to consume 60% of your average wage, which means whatever's left over by the time you've paid food and transport and clothes and electricity, you got nothing left. In fact, you're scratching to even get by at that sort of cost of living situation. So the cost of living is biting in deeper and deeper, and there are people that are saying, well, I can't afford to get a medical procedure at hospital, or I can't afford to get these drugs, and the drugs may only be whatever they need, may only be like $50 a month or something, but that's now beyond their budget because so much of it's being chewed up by rent and energy and so on. So this cost of living pressure means that people have less disposable income. So given the supermarket nature of the pharmacies, they're not making their money out of straight dispensing pharmaceutical products. They're making it out of the other incidental sort of impulse type sales. So given the tight budget so many people are under, they're not buying that stuff. and given they can now buy a lot of that stuff cheaper in the grocery store, they're giving up the convenience of being able to buy it on the spot while they're picking up their pharmaceuticals, and instead they're walking down the road to the the grocery store, chain store, and buying the the aspirin, or it is at a cheaper price there. So these are all factors that have combined to make the already overserviced pharmaceutical and specialty stores in those areas to already make them non-viable. So this pulling back to a more viable level was always on the cards when the buoyant factors, if you like, that held it up started to dissipate, which they always were. It was just a question of time. Now, there's a lot of claims going around that the pharmacies are closing in poorer areas, particularly areas that are primarily or mostly black. This is in the United States as an example. We're seeing something sort of a little bit similar in Australia, not exactly the same dynamics and there's not the widespread looting here, for example, but the this idea of the cost of living forcing people to make economies, cut backs, or go to cheaper stores. That's certainly at play, and so we're seeing that sort of working its way through the retail sector here. So I think there's a shake-up going on, but the disturbing factor is in this shake-up that the stores that survive are going to be the offshore, Indian and Chinese scam stores, and because they operate economies within economies. And this is going to be, I think, one of the big factors that will need to be addressed in the years to come. You've been at Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.